The morning felt ordinary, quiet, still, until the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. I walked across the hallway, my curiosity sparking with every step. When I opened the door, a delivery man stood there, smiling, holding a bouquet of deep red roses, a glossy box of chocolates, and a crisp white envelope. The sweet scent of the roses drifted toward me, filling the air with something almost too romantic to be real. My heart skipped a beat. Valentine's Day had never meant much in my house, but right then, it felt like maybe this year was different. "Happy Valentine's Day, ma'am. Enjoy the surprise," he said, handing everything over with a cheerful nod. His words rang in my ears like music I hadn't heard in years. I took the bundle carefully, my fingers grazing the cool cellophane, the smooth box, the envelope that seemed to hold a secret just for me. My pulse quickened, rising with the thrill of being remembered, of being seen. Could it be that he finally thought of me, without my asking, without reminding? I closed the door and stood in the entryway, hugging the bouquet as if it were fragile proof of something I'd been longing for. The chocolates pressed against my chest, the envelope tucked neatly between my fingers. I could feel my face warming with a smile I couldn't hold back. "Finally," I whispered to myself. He remembered. He never sends me anything. In that moment, it wasn't just flowers and candy, it was hope, blooming right there in my arms. I carried everything into the kitchen, setting the bouquet down on the counter. The roses were stunning, velvety petals opening in full bloom, their deep red like a heartbeat made visible. I reached for a vase, filling it with water, wanting them to last as long as possible. For once, it felt like he'd seen me, really seen me. Not just as the woman who made his meals and kept his life running smoothly, but as the woman he chose. The thought wrapped around me like a warm blanket I hadn't felt in years. As I unwrapped the stems, memories slipped through my mind. Birthdays where he forgot, anniversaries marked with a rushed dinner, Christmas gifts picked up last minute. I'd told myself it didn't matter, that love was shown in other ways. But holding those roses now, smelling their rich perfume, I felt something stir. A piece of me, the part that had been waiting silently, finally breathed. Maybe he was changing. Maybe he was trying. I glanced at the box of chocolates, perfectly wrapped in gold foil with a satin ribbon. My fingers lingered on it as if it held more than sugar inside. I imagined the effort it must have taken, placing the order, remembering the day, thinking of me. My chest swelled with a fragile kind of joy, the kind you don't dare trust too quickly. Still, I let myself smile. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I mattered. I carried the envelope to the kitchen table, placing it right beside the chocolates. My fingertips brushed over its surface, tracing the neat edges, the weight of it heavier than paper had any right to be. My heart pounded in my chest, steady and hopeful, as if inside that card lived the answer I'd been waiting years to hear. I didn't rush. Instead, I let the anticipation build, savoring the rare sweetness of this moment. I sat down slowly, pulling the envelope closer. The house felt different, warmer, brighter, as though the walls themselves recognized something had shifted. I let myself dream for a second. Maybe inside were words I'd longed to hear, promises of love, maybe even an apology for the years of silence. The thought alone made my eyes sting with tears, not of sadness this time, but of relief. I placed my hand over the envelope, holding it still, as if I needed one more breath before opening it. Because once I saw what was inside, there'd be no going back to the mystery. My smile lingered, but somewhere deep down, a tiny unease curled in my stomach. Little did I know that envelope wasn't a gift at all. It was the spark that would set my whole world on fire. With a deep breath, I slid my finger under the flap of the envelope and tore it open. The sound of ripping paper echoed louder than it should have, like a warning I didn't yet understand. I pulled out the card, its glossy surface shining under the kitchen light, little red hearts dancing across the front. My chest swelled with anticipation. This was it, his words, his gesture, his love written down for me. My hands shook, but it was the good kind of trembling, the kind born from joy. I flipped it open, ready to drink in whatever he had written, But the second my eyes landed on the words, my breath caught in my throat. The handwriting was his. There was no denying that. Bold, familiar strokes I'd seen 1,000 times on grocery lists, birthday notes, quick reminders stuck on the fridge. But the message wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone else. The words carved into me like glass. To my love, it read. I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Forever yours, Daniel. I froze, the letters blurring as tears filled my eyes. My pulse roared in my ears, and I felt the room tilt. I whispered to myself, the disbelief scratching at my throat. It's his handwriting. He didn't even bother to hide it. The card slipped from my fingers onto the table, but its weight stayed in my chest, crushing me. I sat there, staring at the card on the table as though it might change if I blinked hard enough. My whole body felt numb, yet my hands trembled uncontrollably. The roses in the vase mocked me, their petals too red, too perfect, like they knew they weren't mine to claim. The chocolates gleamed in their gold wrapping, untouched, a cruel joke sitting inches from me. The air around me thickened, heavy with the sting of betrayal, pressing against my chest until breathing felt impossible. Memories crashed over me in waves, each one more painful than the last. Every time I defended him when friends whispered about his late nights, every time I told myself he was just tired, just distracted, that love sometimes dulled but never disappeared. I had carried the weight of excuses like stones in my pockets, drowning slowly without even realizing it. Now, with one card, the truth was mercilessly clear. It wasn't that he forgot to love me, it was that he loved someone else. Tears spilled freely down my cheeks, hot and relentless, blurring everything in front of me. I pressed my palms against the table, grounding myself in the wood's cool surface. Betrayal has a taste, I realized, a bitter, metallic tang at the back of my throat, like I'd swallowed blood. And yet, beneath the devastation, another feeling stirred, quieter but undeniable. Rage. I picked up the card again, my fingers smudging the ink as if I could erase the words, undo the truth staring back at me. But nothing could blur the reality. He had written those promises for another woman. My chest ached with a hollow pain, the kind that makes you clutch at yourself as though you could hold the pieces of your heart together. My tears stained the paper, tiny circles of proof that I was breaking right there at the kitchen table. I whispered into the silence, my voice cracking. How could you, Daniel? After everything, how could you? The walls didn't answer, only echoed the sound of my despair. The kitchen, once so warm with the glow of hope, now felt cold, the flowers reeking of deceit, the chocolates nothing more than poison wrapped in gold. My body shook, caught between sobs and a fury rising fast, burning hot enough to chase away the numbness. I knew I couldn't stay frozen in that chair forever. The card lay open, damning in its honesty, and I realized it wasn't just a message, it was evidence. Tonight, when he walked through that door, smiling, pretending, I would be ready. He thought I'd never find out, but I was about to make sure he never forgot this Valentine's Day. The hours crawled by until the sound of the front door unlocking sent a jolt straight through me. I sat at the kitchen table, the card lying in plain sight, my hands clenched tight in my lap. When Daniel walked in, he was whistling, swinging his keys like a man without a care in the world. That casual cheer hit me like a slap. How dare he stroll in here, blind to the wreckage he'd left behind with a few careless words written in ink. I kept my voice cold, steady. So, how was your Valentine's Day? I asked, watching his face carefully. He grinned, shrugging off his jacket, not even noticing the trap laid in front of him. Just another day, really, he said, as if it meant nothing. My stomach twisted. Just another day? For me, it had been the day everything came crashing down. I reached for the card and slammed it on the table, the sound cracking through the room like thunder. His head snapped toward it, his smile faltering. My voice rose, shaking with rage I couldn't contain anymore. Don't you dare lie. This is for her, not me. After everything I've done for you, this is how you thank me? He opened his mouth, fumbling for words, but I cut him off before the excuses could form. Do you have any idea what I gave up for you? My voice shook, but it wasn't weakness. It was years of swallowed pain finally breaking free. I turned down promotions so I could follow your career. I left my family behind to build a life here with you. I bent myself into shapes I barely recognized, all so you could shine. The words flew out of me, sharp, unstoppable, years of sacrifice spilling like broken glass across the floor. His eyes narrowed, the easy charm slipping, but I didn't stop. I've stood by you through every mistake, every late night, every time I wondered if I even mattered anymore. And this is what you give me? Roses and chocolates meant for another woman? A card full of promises you never had the courage to write to me? My voice cracked, raw and loud, echoing off the walls like a verdict. For a second, he just stood there, silent, caught between guilt and anger. His jaw tightened, and I saw the flicker of something darker in his eyes. The man who walked in whistling was gone. The mask was slipping, and what lay beneath wasn't love. It was something far colder, and I braced myself for it. I leaned across the table, my voice no longer trembling but fierce, steady. You owe me the truth, Daniel. Not the version you rehearse for the world, not the excuses you think I'll swallow. The truth. My chest rose and fell with every word, my body trembling from the storm I could no longer contain. My heart ached, but beneath the pain, there was a strange clarity, like I was finally seeing him without the haze of hope blurring the edges. He took a step closer, his face darkening, his lips pressed into a thin line. For years, I had carried the weight of this marriage on my back, but in that moment, I realized something chilling. I had been carrying it alone. I gave you everything, I said, my voice dropping low, heavy with grief. My time, my love, my loyalty. And you threw it all away for secrets in the dark. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy as stone. He clenched his fists, and I could feel the air thicken with tension. I had lit the match, and now the flames were about to rise higher than I ever imagined. What I didn't know yet was just how far his truth would burn. His voice erupted, shattering the silence like glass hitting the floor. Enough, Lauren, he roared, his face twisted with a fury I'd never seen before. My breath caught in my chest, but I refused to flinch. I'd lived too long in his shadow to cower now. Still, the venom in his tone made my skin prickle. I never loved you the way you think I did, he spat, each word a blade slicing through the last fragile thread of hope I had been clinging to. I stared at him, my mouth slightly open, my whole body frozen. The air felt sucked out of the room, leaving me hollow, weightless. What did you just say? I managed, my voice trembling but firm, needing to hear it again, as if repetition could somehow make it less real. But he only stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with something cruel, almost triumphant. It's her, he hissed. She's the one I want. She's who I should have been with all along. The words landed harder than any physical blow. My chest caved in, but strangely, I didn't crumble. My tears dried mid-breath, leaving me raw, scorched, yet startlingly awake. In that moment, I knew the fire had burned away the illusions, and what remained was clarity. I stood there, rooted to the spot, every memory we had built together replaying in my mind like cruel fragments of a broken film. Our wedding day, the first home we bought, the nights I stayed awake waiting for him to come back, all of it suddenly felt like a lie stitched together by my own blind devotion. My stomach twisted, a mix of heartbreak and nausea, as though the truth had poisoned me from the inside out. But beneath the ache, something else started to stir. His words, meant to cut me down, were peeling back a curtain I had refused to open for years. I thought I needed him. I thought my sacrifices would someday be enough. Yet here he was, screaming the truth I had been too afraid to name. I was never the woman he wanted. That realization hurt, but it also unlocked a strange freedom I didn't see coming. I lifted my chin, my eyes stinging but unbroken. He expected me to collapse, to beg, to claw for scraps of his affection. Instead, I felt the ground beneath me steady. Yes, my heart was in pieces, But in those pieces, I saw something I hadn't in years. Myself. He had chosen her. Fine. But I still had a choice too. The room was thick with silence after his confession, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Each second felt like it was carving a deeper wound into my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel even a fraction of what I felt, but instead, I just stood there, letting the truth sink into my bones. My body shook, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing it was finally over. He looked at me with a mix of anger and impatience, as if daring me to react, to fight for a love that had never truly been mine, but I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. I realized, with startling clarity, that his words were not just a betrayal. They were a release. A release from years of wondering, doubting, hoping. A release from carrying a marriage he had abandoned long before I ever suspected. I drew in a shaky breath, my voice barely above a whisper but sharp enough to cut. "You've finally said it, Daniel. And now I can finally be done." I didn't wait for his answer, because there was nothing left to hear. The fire had burned through me, leaving nothing but ashes. And from those ashes, something new was about to rise. I didn't bother arguing anymore. The fight drained out of me, replaced by a steady calm that felt almost foreign. My legs moved on instinct, carrying me to the bedroom. I pulled an old suitcase from the closet, the zipper screeching as it opened, and began throwing clothes inside. Each folded shirt, each pair of jeans felt like a quiet declaration. I was leaving, and this time I meant it. My hands shook, but my decision didn't. Behind me, I could hear his footsteps pounding down the hall. His voice followed, rising with a mix of panic and anger. "Where are you going? You can't just leave," he shouted, as though his authority over me was still intact. I didn't even turn around. I kept packing, each item slipping into the suitcase like another piece of my freedom. Finally, I spun to face him, the bag half filled on the bed between us. My heart thudded, but my voice came out clear, steady. "Watch me," I said. No tears, no begging, just the sharp edge of resolve. For the first time in years, I wasn't the woman trying to fix, forgive, or wait. I was the woman walking away. He moved closer, his face tight with fury, but his words wavered with desperation. "You're overreacting. You'll regret this, Lauren. You can't just throw everything away over one mistake." One mistake? The audacity of it lit a fire in my chest. I straightened, clutching the suitcase handle, and looked him dead in the eye. "This wasn't a mistake," I said. "This was a choice you made over and over again, and now I'm making mine." He flinched, caught off guard by the steadiness in my voice. For years, he had been the one with the upper hand, twisting words, making me doubt myself, keeping me tethered to crumbs of affection. But that power was gone now. I could feel it slipping from him, settling into me instead. The silence between us shifted, and for the first time, I wasn't the weaker one in the room. I zipped the suitcase shut, the sound sharp and final. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom knocking at my ribs. I brushed past him, my shoulder barely grazing his, and walked down the hall with the weight of my decision steadying each step. The door was waiting for me, and so was a life I'd almost forgotten I could still claim. I reached the front door, my suitcase rolling behind me, his voice chasing after me one last time. "Lauren, wait! You don't mean this!" he shouted, his tone torn between pleading and commanding. I paused, hand resting on the doorknob, and for a split second I almost looked back. But then I remembered the card, the words, the years of sacrifice that had gone unnoticed. I didn't need another glance to know exactly what I was leaving behind. I pulled the door open, the cool night air rushing in, wrapping around me like a promise. For the first time in years, the world outside didn't feel like a threat. It felt like possibility. I stepped across the threshold, my pulse racing with both fear and exhilaration. Behind me, the door slammed shut, the sound echoing like the final nail sealing a coffin. That life was over. My suitcase rattled along the path as I walked toward the unknown, each step lighter than the one before. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how I'd rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never again waste another second on a man who had never truly valued me. And that knowledge was enough to keep me moving forward. The first weeks were brutal. The silence in the house pressed against me at night, stretching long and heavy without his footsteps, his voice, even his careless whistling. I'd wake up and reach across the bed, only to find the other side cold, and the ache of loneliness would settle into my chest like a stone. Meals felt emptier, mornings dragged, and sometimes I caught myself staring at the door, half expecting him to walk in as if nothing had happened. But slowly, the stillness began to change. I started filling it with my own voice, my own choices. I signed up for a yoga class, though my body protested every stretch at first. I took long walks through the park, letting the crisp air clear the fog in my head. I even started sketching again, pulling out old pencils I hadn't touched in years. With every small step, I felt myself coming back to life, piece by piece. There were nights when the grief hit me hard, and I cried until my chest hurt. But the difference was, I no longer cried for him. I cried for all the years I had lost, for the version of myself I had buried. And once the tears dried, something stronger took root inside me. A quiet resolve, whispering that this pain wouldn't last forever, and that happiness was still mine to claim. Months passed, and the woman in the mirror no longer looked like a shadow of herself. My eyes were brighter, my shoulders straighter, and there was a softness in my smile that came from within, not from anyone else's approval. I had started a small business from my kitchen table, something I'd always dreamed of but never dared to try. It was modest, but it was mine. Each order I packed, each satisfied message I received, reminded me that I was capable of creating something on my own. I surrounded myself with people who saw me, truly saw me. Friends who cheered when I took risks, who sat with me during the hard days, and who celebrated every little victory as if it were their own. I found myself laughing again, the kind of deep belly laughs I hadn't known in years. It was strange and beautiful to feel joy that wasn't tied to waiting on scraps of attention from someone who never valued me. Life wasn't perfect, it never is, but it was mine. And that simple truth was enough to steady me. Every yoga session, every sunrise walk, every sale from my little business stitched me back together. I wasn't the same woman who once begged for crumbs of affection. I was becoming someone new, someone whole, and for the first time in decades, I felt proud of who I was becoming. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled across my living room, I placed a vase of fresh flowers on the table. Roses, bright, fragrant, alive. But this time, they weren't a gift from him. They were from me, to me. I traced a petal between my fingers and smiled, not with longing, but with certainty. I didn't need anyone else to prove my worth. I was enough, more than enough, all on my own. A friend stopped by later that day, her eyes catching the flowers. She leaned against the counter, curiosity flickering. "Do you ever miss him?" she asked gently, as if afraid the question might reopen a wound. I set the vase down, my smile calm, serene, the kind that comes from scars that have healed. "Not for a second," I said. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. It had taken pain to teach me, but I finally understood. It's better to be happy and alone than disrespected and with the wrong person. As I sat back, the soft glow of the evening filling the room, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. A peace that came not from him, not from anyone else, but from choosing myself. And that choice above all was the greatest gift I could ever give.